orbital fascia is going to form a small orbital ring, which is called as ring of Zinn. If you remember the extraocular muscles, the ring of Zinn gives origin to the all recti muscles. And now you can see the two divisions of the oculomotor nerve are running in the ring of Zinn. Now here the nerve will be divided into two divisions. One is upper division and second is the lower division. Trace out the upper division. You can see it is going to supply two important muscles. One is the levator palpebrae superioris, that is the uppermost in position, and second is the superior rectus. Go towards the lower division now. It is going to supply medial rectus, inferior rectus and inferior oblique. So if you have seen the distribution of the oculomotor nerve now, it is going to supply all extraocular muscles except superior oblique and lateral rectus. If you trace the nerve which is going to the inferior oblique, this is the nerve here, you can identify. And now we have shown a dot-like structure labeled as ciliary ganglion. So this nerve to inferior oblique is responsible to carry parasympathetic fibers to the ciliary ganglion, which are going to supply sphincter pupillae and ciliaris muscle. Is it clear? So this is the course of the oculomotor nerve. We have seen initially it lies in the midbrain, then related to the cross cerebri, then related to two important arteries, then related to the tentorium cerebelli, crosses the free and the attached margin of the tentorium cerebelli, lies lateral to the posterior communicating artery, lies in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, breaks this wall and comes to lie in the middle compartment of the superior orbital fissure, and then innervates all extraocular muscles of the eyeball except superior oblique and lateral rectus. Now we will go towards the applied anatomy. Now many times the compression of the oculomotor nerve takes place inside the cranial cavity. You should know what are the causes. If you see the diagram, you can see here, this is the basilar artery which is dividing into posterior cerebral artery. Below that lies the superior cerebellar artery. And we have seen oculomotor nerve which is running between these two arteries over here. This is the posterior communicating artery which will connect the, that is the internal carotid artery, and helps to form the circle of Willis. If you see a dilated portion here, this is called as aneurysm. Now many times aneurysm is coming from either posterior communicating artery or it is coming from internal carotid artery. So posterior communicating artery, you can see here giving the origin to the aneurysm. And what do you mean by word aneurysm? Aneurysm means it is the abnormal dilatation of any artery. Now here the dilatation is coming from the posterior communicating artery and it is going to compress the oculomotor nerve. You can see here compression of aneurysm by posterior communicating artery or coming from the internal carotid artery as it passes through the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. This is the one cause, or sometimes there is a herniation of the uncal part of the temporal lobe, and that is called as a transtentorial uncal herniation. So these are the two reasons why there is a compression of the oculomotor nerve. Coming to the manifestations, if such compression takes place, you should know what are the clinical features seen in the patient.
Ptosis.
Very important, you can see the ptosis. What do you mean by word ptosis? You can see this is the patient showing the normal eyelid here, and you can see slight drooping of the eyelid on the affected side. So ptosis means drooping of the upper eyelid, and it is mainly because of the paralysis of the levator palpebrae superioris. Is it clear? So this condition is called as ptosis. Second, you should know strabismus. Generally we call it as the squint. Here we are going to see the lateral strabismus. You can see a normal eyeball and you can see here paralyzed eyeball. So this is called as the lateral strabismus. It is because the medial rectus is paralyzed, and lateral rectus is not innervated by oculomotor nerve, but it is innervated by abducent nerve. So remember, that muscle will become dominant and it will pull the eyeball laterally. This condition of the eyeball is considered as lateral strabismus, and it is unopposed action There is no opposition coming from the lateral rectus, and dominance of the medial rectus of that side takes place. Then go towards the third symptom. You can see in the patient dilated and the fixed pupil. Now you can tell me why the dilated pupil occurs over here. Which fibers will be gone now? These are the parasympathetic fibers which are going to supply our sphincter pupillae and ciliaris muscle. So dilator pupillae, now remember, it is supplied by sympathetic fibers, while sphincter pupillae are supplied by the parasympathetic fibers coming from our oculomotor nerve. So here paralysis of the sphincter pupillae occurs and dilator pupillae becomes dominant, and you can see here such a dilated pupil is there. So remember, this is because of the unopposed action of the dilator pupillae. Next symptom is the loss of accommodation reflex. What do you mean by accommodation? It is mainly accommodation of the lens with the help of ciliaris muscle for the near vision. I couldn't get a good picture here, but remember, there is always loss of accommodation in the compression of the oculomotor. Next symptom, the patient will complain of diplopia. What do you mean by word diplopia? Diplopia means double vision. Now we know that there is a medial rectus which is paralyzed. So when the patient tries to look medially or inferiorly or superiorly, it is due to the paralysis of medial rectus, inferior rectus as well as inferior oblique. And you can see here the double vision, the patient, the object will appear in the form of this in the patient's retina. And the last condition you should know, this is called as the proptosis. Just look at the eyeball of this patient. It is so horrible, isn't it? So you can see there is a prominence of the eyeball here. You can see just eyeball are coming out of the orbit. It occurs because all the extraocular muscles are paralyzed except superior oblique and lateral rectus. But because of this, remember, there is a relaxation of these extraocular muscles and leads to this condition called as proptosis. Is it clear? So these are the main symptoms which will occur due to the compression or if there is any complete lesion. Now go towards the incomplete lesion of the oculomotor nerve. What do you mean by incomplete lesion? Some fibers are spared and some fibers are damaged. Now what happens in the incomplete lesion over here? We can divide the condition into two areas. One is called as internal ophthalmoplegia and second is called as external ophthalmoplegia. What do you mean by this word? Internal ophthalmoplegia, try to understand this condition. The nerve supply to the extraocular muscle is spared. So they are normal. So extraocular muscles are not paralyzed here. But remember, there is selective damage to these autonomic fibers coming to the sphincter pupillae and ciliaris muscle. So definitely there will be loss of accommodative reflex as well as loss of direct and consensual light reflexes. Is it clear? So this condition is called as internal ophthalmoplegia. Just opposite to that, where you can see sphincter pupillae and ciliaris muscle are spared and the paralysis of the extraocular muscle takes place, it is called as external ophthalmoplegia. So these two lesions will be seen only in the incomplete lesion of the oculomotor nerve. Then go towards the Weber syndrome. Weber syndrome is usually seen in the midbrain. If you try to see this area, this is the midbrain here. Anterior part of the midbrain is called as crus cerebri. Next to that, the dark zone is called as substantia nigra. This area is called as tegmentum and the dark zone is called as red nucleus. This is periaqueductal gray matter and these are the two superior colliculi and these are the pretectal nuclei. Now if you observe, these are the two oculomotor nuclei and the oculomotor nerve is running through the tegmentum. It is running through our crus cerebri. And the crus cerebri always carries corticospinal tracts, followed, as well as corticopontine fibers. So what happens in this Weber syndrome? It is going to damage the oculomotor nerve which is running through the crus cerebri along with corticospinal tracts or the pyramidal tracts which are damaged here. Can you follow? So what will be the manifestations here? Now you are not gone, you are not studied with the tracts. You should know what you mean by upper motor neurons and what you mean by lower motor neurons. Now, lower motor neurons means these are the motor nuclei or motor neurons which are present in anterior gray column of the spinal cord. As well as these are the cranial nerve nuclei which are present in our brainstem. So they are classified as lower motor neurons. And what do you mean by upper motor neurons? These are nothing but pyramidal bed cells which are present in our cerebral cortex, as well as the fibers which arise from the cerebral cortex. Mainly we classify them as corticospinal, corticonuclear and corticopontine fibers. But here you can see now corticospinal fibers are involved. So what will be the manifestations in the Weber syndrome? As the oculomotor nerve is gone, it will be lower motor neuron palsy on the same side. So we use the word ipsilateral. So lower motor neuron palsy of the same side, as well as upper motor neuron palsy of the opposite side due to the involvement of the corticospinal fibers. So don't get confused with the upper motor neuron palsy and the lower motor neuron palsy. Remember, why contralateral? Corticospinal fibers are crossing to the opposite side. So opposite side of the body will get paralyzed. So we call it as the upper motor neuron palsy on the contralateral side, while ipsilateral lower motor neuron palsy on the same side. Is it clear? So this is called as the Weber syndrome. Then go one more condition you should know, internuclear ophthalmoplegia. We have seen the central connections of the oculomotor nucleus, isn't it? It is connected via medial longitudinal fasciculus with the abjacent nucleus. If there is lesion to the medial longitudinal fasciculus, that is going to disconnect oculomotor nucleus, which is going to supply medial rectus, and abjacent nucleus, which is going to supply lateral nucleus. See now what happens. In this condition, if the patient is asked to look laterally or on the right or the left side, the lateral rectus of the same side will contract, carrying the eye laterally. Can you follow? But opposite medial rectus fails to contract and the eye will look straight forwards. Can you notice it? This is because of the damage to the medial longitudinal bundle. So ipsilateral, lateral rectus contracts, turning the eye laterally, but contralateral medial rectus fails to contract and the eyes look straight forwards. So this is called as internuclear ophthalmoplegia. Bilateral internuclear ophthalmoplegia can be seen with the person suffering from multiple sclerosis. This is congenital collagen disorder or any occlusovascular disease, direct trauma, or any tumors leading to the brainstem. Unilateral lesion may be also seen if there is infarction of any small branch coming from the basilar artery. So this condition is called as the internuclear ophthalmoplegia. Thank you. So we have covered the first part over here. Now we'll go towards the trochlear nerve. Okay. So we'll start with the trochlear nerve. So here we are going to complete again the competency number same, that is 31.2, 31.5. But here we are going to deal with the functional components as well as nuclear origin, force, relations, distribution of the trochlear nerve. If you compare the oculomotor nerve, the course relations are approximately same, only the distribution is different. And also we should know what happens to the patient if there is trochlear nerve palsy. Okay. So go for the trochlear nerve now. It is classified as fourth cranial nerve. What type of nerve? Similarly like oculomotor nerve, it is also classified as purely motor nerve. Now there are some important features about the trochlear nerve which you should know. This is very commonly asked in the MCQs. Always remember, this is only cranial nerve which is coming from the dorsal side of the brainstem. Remaining all cranial nerve arising from the brainstem, they come in the ventral in position. This is the only cranial nerve which undergoes complete decussation, that is crossing with the nerve of the opposite side before emerging from the brainstem. And this decussation takes place in the superior medullary velum, which forms the roof for the fourth ventricle. It is the thinnest in all cranial nerves, but smallest in length when compared with the other cranial nerves. It has longer intracranial course. And remember, it will always receive ipsilateral corticonuclear fibers. Also, phylogenetically, it is considered as a nerve of third eye. What do you mean by third eye? Pineal gland is considered as the third eye. Any problem? I am audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please don't disturb me. Somebody's mic is on. Please mute it. Now go towards the functional components. See here, these two nerves can be asked as a LAQs. So prepare it. There are specific cranial nerves. They can be asked for LAQs. Remember, third nerve, fourth nerve. They can ask you seventh nerve, fifth nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve. They can ask you hypoglossal or accessory nerve. So be prepared with all these cranial nerves. Okay. So go to the functional component of the trochlear nerve nucleus. It is classified as general somatic efferent. We have seen various classifications, special, visceral, bronchiomotor, but here we classify as general somatic because it is going to supply the muscles coming from somites. So already we have studied that extraocular muscles are coming from preaortic myotomes. These are cranial most somites. So the nucleus now represents general somatic efferent or somatic efferent column. It is going to be present in the midbrain and going to supply the superior oblique muscle of our eyeball. Just now we have completed oculomotor, we have seen it. Now we are dealing with the trochlear nerve. Go for the nuclear origin. We have seen trochlear nucleus present in the midbrain, but it lies at the level of the inferior colliculus, just below the oculomotor nucleus. Central nucleus in the similar fashion, cortex, we will get corticonuclear fibers here. And again, these corticonuclear fibers are coming from area number 4 and area number 6, projected by two cerebral hemispheres. It is connected to the midbrain, you can see here. And now it is going to help in the formation of the tectobulbar tract, which is responsible for our spino-visual reflexes. It is connected to the medial longitudinal bundle by which the trochlear nucleus will be connected to the oculomotor nucleus, abducent nucleus, and vestibular nucleus. This connection is responsible for the coordination of our eye movements. Then course and relations. In the similar fashion, you can see the same diagram, but don't get confused. You have to remember it is easy to draw this diagram. So I have given this. You can take a photograph of this diagram. And now you can see here the same thing. This is the midbrain. This is the periaqueductal gray matter. This is the tegmentum, substantia nigra, crus cerebri. This is the tentorium cerebelli, posterior clinoid process, cavernous sinus. This is the lesser wing of sphenoid showing the anterior clinoid process, optic nerve, and this is the hypophyseal fossa. So you can correlate all these things when I am describing the course of the trochlear nerve. So now the trochlear nerve, which arises from this trochlear nucleus, we have seen oculomotor nucleus nerve goes straight forwards, but here you can see now the nerve is coming by encircling the periaqueductal gray matter and comes on the posterior side of our brainstem. Here, the nerve will decussate at the level of the superior medullary velum, which is a nervous tissue forming the roof of the fourth ventricle. Here, the nerve now passes forwards, downwards, and now laterally winds this gray matter after decussating with the nerve of the opposite side, and then passes on the dorsal surface of our superior cerebellar peduncle and crus cerebri. At this level, it is related to the temporal lobe. So it lies between the temporal lobe and this is the basis pedunculi, also called as the crus cerebri. Again, the nerve you can see it is related to arteries like similar what we have seen in the oculomotor nerve. The nerve runs between the superior cerebellar artery and posterior cerebral artery. Here it is going to cross the dura mater between the attached margin as well as free margin of the tentorium cerebelli. It is going to run in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. Okay, so after crossing this posterior clinoid process, It is going to run forwards to lie in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, but again it will be separated from the blood of the cavernous sinus by the endothelial or ependymal lining. Now, as you go towards this course of the oculomotor nerve, here it will be related to the other nerves. Above will be the oculomotor nerve and below will be the ophthalmic as well as the maxillary nerve. It will leave the cavernous sinus by passing through the or piercing this lateral wall and comes to lie in the superior orbital fissure. If you see the course in the superior orbital fissure here, it lies in the lateralmost compartment of the superior orbital fissure. So it will be situated between the ring of Zinn and nasociliary nerve. Okay, so it is not running inside the ring of Zinn, it is lying outside the ring of Zinn. In the orbit, you can see it is crossing above the levator palpebrae superioris muscle and then comes to lie on the medial aspect to supply the superior oblique muscle. Is it clear? So this is how it is going to innervate the superior oblique muscle. To revise the relations, you can see here, near the periaqueductal gray matter, it will be related to the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. At the posterior part of the brain stem, it is crossing with the opposite fibers of the same nerve and related to the superior medullary vellum. When it comes on the dorsal aspect of the brain stem, this is the crus cerebri. Between the crus cerebri, laterally it will be always related to the uncus of the temporal lobe. When it comes forwards towards the crus cerebri, it will be related to these two important arteries. Also remember, we have studied posterior communicating artery in the oculomotor nerve. In the similar fashion, this nerve will be also situated lateral to the posterior communicating artery. In the cavernous sinus, we have seen it is again second in position. Above lies the oculomotor nucleus nerve, below lies the ophthalmic and the maxillary nerve. In the superior orbital fissure, it will lie lateral to the tendinous ring of Zinn, and now it will be related to the levator palpebrae superioris and then comes to lie along the supramedial part of the orbital wall towards the superior oblique muscle. Have you followed it? So this is in short, we have revised. And the last point to be revised now, that is only one applied anatomy you should know. That is damage to the trochlear nerve. What will happen if there is damage to the trochlear nerve? We know that it is going to supply only one muscle, that is the superior oblique muscle. If you remember what is the action of the superior oblique muscle, you must have studied in the extraocular muscles. This muscle is called as coping muscle. What do you mean by coping muscle? Many times you copy, no? We go for so many tests. Because of CBME, you are always exposed to so many tests. So these periodic assessments, you people are not studying, you just goes on peeping on other papers, what the other student is writing. At that time, your superior oblique is always dominant. So this is called as a student's muscle or also called as the coping muscle of the eyeball. Okay. So here what happens now, the superior oblique muscle is going to be paralyzed. So what happens, the patient is unable to turn his eye downwards and laterally. Person does not have difficulty in vision as long as he is going to look straight forwards above the horizontal plane. But when he is going to attempt to look below, he will complain of diplopia because he is going to look downwards and the superior oblique is paralyzed. So there will be diplopia when he tries to look downwards on the same side, and he may feel that he is going to fall down. In order to prevent this, the affected person tries to move with the head tilting forwards towards the sound side. Is it clear? So this was about the applied anatomy of the trochlear nerve. So today we have completed third nerve and fourth nerve. Are there any difficulties? Students are free to ask the questions. You can